any failure really doesn't bother me. I don't see it as failure. It's just a testing process, but that can really throw people off where they start an ad and they're expecting it to be amazing. And then it inevitably, especially at the beginning, is probably going to suck. And then they stop, and they say, I've tested a bunch of stuff, and I'll talk to them, and they've tested two things. This is really common. So, and part of that's just experience and knowing what testing means and the scope of how much you actually have to test to become good and find things that are good. But some of it's mindset as well, where it's just not necessarily going to be a great fit for them. So you want to find those things where you can accept whatever challenges or discomfort lies ahead. And I would start with those. I think one thing with productivity is that there's always this recommendation, be like, do the most uncomfortable thing possible. That's the only way to grow. That's it's kind of bullshit, man. Like, if I'm being honest, because it's, especially when you're not forced to do it by someone else. We're all here by ourselves. We don't have a boss forcing us to do it. It's really hard to do that if you're just terrified of doing something or super uncomfortable. And that's not to say never go out of your comfort zone or never do things that bring you some amount of discomfort, because you do have to do those. That's just part of life. But immediately jumping into the deep end of the pool that's freezing cold and covered in ice and has all these polar bears in it, it's that's not a great strategy, right? And none of that may be real. The polar bears might not be real. The ice might not be real. It might all be in your head, but it is real in that moment. The fear is real, and you have to acknowledge that. So it's easier to start a little bit further down the chain. And a lot of those things are things that are really powerful. It's not for example, posting videos on TikTok is worse of a strategy than running Facebook ads. Right now, doing TikTok stuff might be better than doing Facebook ads. If you're good at the TikTok stuff, I'll say this, the thought of doing a bunch of TikTok videos does not really thrill me in terms of the level of comfort that I have with that. If I had to do it, I could probably figure out how to do it and accept it, but I don't. So right now, it's not really something that's at the top of my list. So you may be the inverse of that. Really just figure out how to drive visibility, look at how you can do that, and then you can narrow it down to things that fit your budget, fit your strengths, fit your current comfort level, and go from there. I think that that's a much better approach and gets you moving faster, because you can spend years just kind of worrying about, I'm not doing this, or none of us are doing everything. You can't do everything. There are dozens of ways to get people to your books. As for people ragging on your book or saying it sucks, or, you putting something out there and people not liking it or being uncomfortable with putting the book out there, I have news. People are not going to like your book. That's just universal. There's no avoiding that. You may be hoping that your book is the only one to get unanimous 5 stars across the board. It will not be the case. So you can look at popular authors, go read their reviews and read the 1-star reviews. They're all really harsh. And I wouldn't worry about it. There are books that you don't like that other people like. There are books that you really like that other people don't like. And it's going to be the same with your readership. But it's not a big deal if no one likes the book. I've written stuff that people have reviewed harshly and said, however they felt about it, which they're totally entitled to do. And that's cool. They didn't like it. It's not a big deal. I survived. I'm still here talking. There's nothing, it doesn't matter. That's what you have to kind of internalize. And each time you get a harsh review, it just hammers that point home. You get more and more immune to it. The other thing is you can just kind of avoid the reviews. You don't necessarily have to read them. It's easier said than done for most authors, but it's you don't have to read them. I think they're useful sometimes for feedback, or you can use them in ads for ad copy and things of that nature. But if it's going to bother you to that extent, you just don't read them. But that's part of being an author, is getting that feedback. It's very public feedback. It's very direct, where in real life you don't usually have those scenarios where someone tells you that this is terrible and the worst thing they ever read, and the thing that you worked on for the past 3 months is garbage. But that's fine. If they felt that way, then it's how they felt. I would say it's better to have a book elicit some sort of emotional reaction rather than just kind of like nothing. So it's better to get some sort of emotional response than nothing at all.